Joining me today at the Missing Link. I'm really looking forward to sharing this information with you guys. Basically, I ended up realizing back in 2010 when I first was introduced to this type of testing through a mentor of mine. He had taken a course with Dr. Chris Still out of the UK, and that's where we got these kits, the epigenetics kits from. This is one of the original ones actually. And so basically he ended up getting the kits, and then he was also mentoring me in how to use them all and stuff. Because these things have made a massive difference in my practice and obviously in his practice, in the way of addressing chronic pain, addressing autoimmune issues, even performance factors when it comes to working with athletes and stuff too. Because if somebody has an infection, let's say candida, too much pathogenic bacteria in the microbiome, heavy metal overload or chemical toxicity, well then that's going to affect their entire body, right? It's going to affect all the meridian lines, it's going to affect the organs, it's going to affect muscles, and you're going to have a loss of performance, and you're also going to have a lot of muscles not working to their fullest potential as well. So that leads to pain, and that leads to dysfunction, right? So by integrating this into your client sessions, because I know you guys are doing a lot of body work and stuff, and you already do nutritional stuff too, but now being able to get to the infection level and seeing what's going on with toxicity, that is huge. It's a game changer, right? And then using specific bioenergy patches as well, which are, I'll show you in a second. Actually, here we go. So which are basically like patches like this. So this one here is called organ support. So they're basically little bioenergy patches that are on a 3M antibacterial tape, and they have crystalline material that they've basically put onto the 3M tape, and they've infused this crystalline material with specific frequencies to create the different patches. There's probably about 150 different patches that we use with quanta therapies right now. And they really are amazing. I was first introduced to these back in 2017. And since I started integrating this with, the food, the manual therapy, everything, it's been amazing, right? And every single therapist who started to use these things will tell you the same thing. They've been a serious game changer in their practice, right? So you can just get results that much quicker. And at the same time, clients are going to start to feel better much faster now, right? Because now you're providing the body with frequencies to help boost their system. So let's say if you found that there's a lot of liver congestion, right, when you're going through and you're working with your client. Well, if you put a liver support patch on there now, that's going to help optimize the frequency of the liver. So that means the liver is going to start to function better just by putting a patch on, right? Now, if you know how to work the liver as well through osteopathic ways, and getting the rib cage moving, all that sort of stuff too, it's going to be even more effective, right? Because we know that the organs have to move well, they have to have proper motility, mobility, all that stuff too, right? So it's the combination of everything that really works well. So that's why I call this course the Missing Link, because a lot of times you're going to do a nutritional course and you're going to do basically different nutritional courses, and they never get into the infection part because there's no real way of testing for it unless you're sending it off to labs and all sorts of stuff. Well, unless you're a naturopath and stuff or a medical doctor, it's very hard to do so. So how do you go about doing this sort of thing? Well, using these little vials that are filled with frequencies, right? Now you're able to do the testing right in your office, and you just use it through kinesiological testing, right? So muscle testing. And that's been amazing because clients also have a budget and they don't want to spend money on sending off for all kinds of labs and urine analysis, all that sort of stuff, right? Because it costs a lot of money to get this testing done. And a lot of it isn't even done in Canada. It's done in the US, right? And so even you're looking at naturopathic medicine, they're also limited on the testing they can do. And that's a big problem, right? Even they're not even allowed to prescribe over 2,000 IUs of vitamin D per day. They're not even allowed to do that, So it's really, really limited. So this helps open the door to to being able to now let your client know exactly what is going on with them, right? And over the years, I've basically perfected the testing using 4 limbs, so the arms and the legs, instead of just using one arm or one leg to do the testing. And what I found is that it's much more accurate now. Like, I've had people here in Ottawa and also in Sudbury working at another one of my students' clinics, where they've gone and had live blood cell analysis and blood work, and my stuff has come back like 99% accurate. So they were tested. You can see it on the live blood cell analysis in the microscope, right? You could see that there was parasites and all this sort of stuff, can't eat in that. Well, my stuff was showing the exact same thing. So once you get proficient with the muscle testing, because some people are really easy to test, some people are very hard to test, right? And it's funny because I had Jolianne come down yesterday with her husband, and so I'm testing her husband, and he's very hard to test. It's very subtle with him, right? And so she says, she's like, I've been practicing with him. No wonder I can't get it. And I said, but he's the worst one to start with as a beginner. So whenever you start to get into this muscle testing, you really got to be careful who you're working with in the beginning, because you want to find somebody that's very easy, like their nervous system will respond, either very weak or very strong. It makes it much easier as a beginner to understand what the feel is, right? I've been doing it for 10 years, and so I got a feel. And so basically when I'm testing now, I can feel also, it's weird, but I can feel if it's also emotional linked or meridian linked, and so you'll get a feel over the time, right? But it's super important that you master the muscle testing part. And so we're going to really make sure you guys know how to muscle test by the end of the weekend. And at the same time, understanding that it's not a specific protocol that's going to help a client. It's a process. It's a thought process that I want you guys to understand, right? Because you might have, let's say one person with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and another person with the same thing, right? But you're going to have a little bit of tweaks that are going to be different from one client to the next, right? Because maybe broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage is really bad for the one person, but the other person, because it's causing more gas, right, in the intestinal tract. But with the other person, it's not doing that. They're not having that same reaction. You know what I mean? So learning to tweak their nutritional plan is huge. That one little tweak can make it or break it for that client, right? And typically, when you're going through and doing a protocol, it's 6 to 8 weeks, right? So I typically tell them it's going to be about an 8-week process. Even if they have an autoimmune issue, all that sort of stuff. Now, with the autoimmune issues, it can go on 6 months to a year, depending how long they've had these problems, right? Because it's not a quick fix. But you always start them off. You tell them, okay, it's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks, the initial cleanse. And then from there, you can go further, right? But to get somebody to, and you'll know this for sure, to have somebody go on a very clean diet, right? Staying away from all the junk food and alcohol and all that sort of stuff, right, is very tough for 8 weeks. Very, very, very tough, okay? Food is a very specific thing, and it's very social, right? And it's very personal, And if you have a lot of emotional issues and you kind of eat your emotions and stuff like that, well, it's even tougher. You know what I mean? So you really have to understand your client when you're working with them and seeing, what's going to overwhelm them and what's not going to overwhelm them. Sometimes you got to start so slow that it's like, okay, all I want you to do in the morning is have a glass of lemon water, right? A little bit of Himalayan pink salt or Celtic sea salt, whatever. And we're just going to start with that first for like a couple of weeks. And let's just see what starts to happen, And then, or else maybe that person, they're not eating breakfast. And intermittent fasting is a big thing these days, time restricted eating, all that sort of stuff. It can be good for sure, there's no question, right? But people that are very sick, or they're very stressed, cortisol levels are high, or they're too low because the HPA axis is not functional right now, that's not a good thing, right? You need to get their blood sugars regulated and stuff. And so one of the first things is, okay, we got to start getting in more protein. Why? Because protein boosts the immune system. Your immune system needs the protein, So you're starting to get some food into them, whereas for years they probably haven't had any breakfast, right? They're probably only eating 1 or 2 meals a day, because you see a lot of people doing that, especially even obese people. They're not eating enough, right? And they're very, very nutrient deficient. It's a huge problem. So you want to get these people starting to eat again. Once that is going and blood sugars are starting to regulate and stuff like that, you're going to see a lot of times as you're doing the cleansing and stuff, people are just start losing weight without even trying. Like specifically one of my clients right now that I'm working with, she came in because of low back pain. Well, I'm going through her medical questionnaire, and I'm seeing that she's on, what's it called, Nexium, right? So that is blocking the stomach acid, okay? Because she has acid reflux, okay? So throughout COVID, she wasn't able to see her doctor, and she's like, "Oh, Steve, like stuff's coming up, like big chunks and stuff like that. I'm not breaking down my food at all." And I'm like, "Holy geez, well, that's not good, whenever you have intestinal inflammation, right, you're going to have back pain. More than likely, you're going to have back pain because why? Because inflamed intestines are going to shut down your abdominal wall. Plus, they also refer pain elsewhere in the body. So that's a big, big issue. So I said, okay, well, we need to get you on some digestive enzymes and stuff like that, right? And so we just made that quick little thing, okay, to start with some digestive enzymes. And I had her start with like 1 betaine hydrochloride capsule as well in the middle of her meal. And then she came back, she's like, "Oh, wow," she's like, "it's starting to work." The week after she came back and it's like, "It's starting to feel better," So I'm like, "That's good." So I said, "How about we run the missing link testing on you and just see what we find?" Well, and sure enough, we found some heavy metal stuff. We found some candida and parasite and, too much pathogenic bacteria. So I said, okay, well, we need to address this now. So then I sent her, and she was just like, and I found out ahead of time. So she was willing to just do everything all at once. She's like, "I'll cut out the wine. I'll do whatever you tell me to do." She's like, "I'm tired of this back pain." For years, she's been waking up every single day with back pain, right? So, you want your client at that stage where they're ready to just make the changes and they don't give a crap what they have to do, right? And so she was at that stage. And so now it's been 3 weeks. She's been on the plan. And I gave her other supplements and stuff to help, like herbal tinctures and stuff to help combat the infections and, get some of these heavy metals out with fulvic minerals and humic acids and stuff like that. And she's already down 14 pounds. She's not exercising. She goes out for walks because I wanted her to do things that were nice and easy right now because she's had a lot of stress and stuff too. So again, looking at stress levels and what sort of activity they're going to do as well is very, very important to the process. And then now her husband is on board with the food plan too. They're eating like more like grass-fed, really good high quality meats and stuff, right? And all organic. And she's blown away by the differences already. She's like, "Steve, I don't have any acid reflux at all. It's only been 3 weeks." And she's like, "My gut feels so much better." She still had some back pain because of a lot of tension in through the front still because, remember what I said, right? So if the intestines are very inflamed, you're going to shut down the abdominal wall. So rectus abdominis and obliques and stuff aren't going to fire very well, right? And so what happens is your iliopsoas muscles are going to start to overwork and overfire. And so they take over the role, and so do the low back muscles, the lumbar muscles, and the erectors, right? They're going to take over the role of stabilizing that pelvis and the spine. So that becomes a big issue because now nerves are going to get stuck in tight fascia, especially crossing over the iliac crest and everything else and coming across the anterior portion of the body too. So, by doing this, now she's starting to feel a lot better. So after the last session, I really loosened things up in here. I worked in her intestines and stuff too. And she's like, "Wow, what a difference. I actually woke up for the first time in like 10 years without back pain." So that's super encouraging, right? It's only been 3 weeks, so I'm pretty happy with that. And we're getting to the root cause. We're not just fixing her temporarily. Now we're fixing her long term. And so now, just by following my posts and stuff too, she's like, every time you put a post out, she goes, "I feel like you're talking to me directly, And so I'm like, well, maybe, And so it's cool because now she's like, "Okay, well, I want to fix this now. I want to fix," you know what I mean? So she's really on board. So you're going to get those clients that are super gung-ho. They want to make all the changes right away. And then other clients, it's like, well, they've been kind of, unhappy with the pain, but kind of happy with it at the same time, So they're not really too willing to make too many changes at once. And so if you go give them this whole big lifestyle change, they're going to be overwhelmed and they're going to be like, no, I can't do all that. what are you doing? So then, you got to do little changes, right? So like I said, the lemon water. Okay, well now let's start getting a little bit of protein on breakfast. Start with that, or have breakfast, period, because you're not having anything, Start with that. And then after they're like, oh, okay, I can do that, no problem. And then you give them, maybe 1 or 2 exercises to start doing at home to just help with some of those areas that haven't been working very well. And then after they're happy with that, So basically the missing link, that's the reason why I wanted to get this information out there, because there aren't many courses out there that offer this type of information and have this type of testing. Like even with Dr. Chris Still's course, like the epigenetics ones, when I learned that one back in 2010, well, the problem with that is that he didn't give you the nutritional kind of protocols or thinking process behind it. Well, what do you do? He was just talking about supplementation or essential oils or Bach flower remedies. That was it. I'm like, okay, well, food is like super important here, even more so than the supplements in the beginning, right? And so that's where I wanted to link everything together. And at the same time, I also get into some genetic polymorphisms as well, some of the more common ones in this one. We're going to have other courses, which I already discussed with Nick, getting more into also neurotransmitters linked in with food, and then also with the genetic polymorphisms as well. But those will be like little branch off courses that'll just be online. We won't need to do a hands-on course for those ones as well. So those will be additions to the missing link later on, okay? But those are super important too, because let's just say you have somebody who, a classic sign of a hypomethylator, right? So they eat asparagus, and after when they go pee, right, their urine smells like asparagus. Well, that's a classic sign that now they're not detoxifying their cells very well. So we need to make sure that they get the proper nutrients in order to be able to detoxify their cells. So what are some of the things that they need? B9, big time. So folate and not folic acid. So if you look at some of the different multivitamins out there, they'll have folic acid as one of their things in there for B9, right? The problem with folic acid is that it actually blocks the folate receptor sites. So now you're not going to be absorbing B9 at all, right? So you got to stay away from folic acid. It's very toxic, and especially for hypomethylators, super toxic. So stay away from those things. So you want to use one that's a methylated version, right? So MTHFR. That's going to be good. So if you look at companies like AOR, Advanced Orthomolecular Research, super high quality. Metagenics is going to have it. Thorne. So there's a lot of different companies that have those in there already. So understanding this process. So basically, with the B9, you also need B6, and magnesium's a big one too for those hypomethylators. Right, magnesium's involved in over 300 chemical processes within the body, right? So everybody should be pretty much on magnesium, especially with North American diets that are very low in magnesium, right? Another thing that could be a possibility with these people is that betaine tends to also drop down as far as the hydrochloric acid goes within the stomach, so it tends to become lower. So, supplementing with some sort of enzyme, like the ones I like to use are by NeuEra. Those ones, whenever you look at the enzyme, like what we need to have as far as enzymes to have a good enzyme like capsule, NeuEra meets all the criteria. Okay, so there's been great books I've been reading on enzymes and stuff over the last couple of years. And that's where I gathered all this information, and I put the criteria in the notes. So when you're looking for enzymes, you have to make sure each one has those quantities that you're looking for. So like amylase has to have a certain amount of the product within the capsule, lipase, anything that's going to help break down the different proteins and fats and carbs, right? But if, to give you an idea, like Organica, their enzymes suck. Don't ever buy those ones. Right? So when you're looking at the criteria of what you need in an enzyme, do not go there. So you're gonna look at your list now, and after whenever you go back home, you start to look at your enzymes, or if you start to look at ones online, you're gonna start to realize, oh, there's a lot of out there that are no good because they're not meeting all the criteria of everything you need to break down all your foods, right? So you got to make sure. Especially for somebody who's a hypomethylator, because they could have genetic polymorphism with their hydrochloric acid, where it's just not quite producing a lot. And so in that case, you need to supplement with a betaine hydrochloride and with really good enzymes that are going to help them break down their food better as well. Another thing that we get into with the workshop that a lot of the other courses don't, well, obviously the bioenergy patches, but at the same time, with this course too, we get into the hands-on and the visual perspective of working with the client. Because whenever you're working with a client just in nutrition, you're never really looking at the face, the eyes, even the tongue. You're not looking at the skin. You're not looking for like stretch marks throughout the back. You're not looking to palpate the lymphatic zones and all that sort of stuff. So you're missing a lot of key information, right? So this is where combining all this now and really looking at the body with a visual perspective, getting in and palpating and so that is huge. It's huge. Your hands do the talking, right? And your eyes, you always got to be looking, So one of my mentors, actually, I love this guy, is Dr. David Leaf. You've seen him at Swiss and stuff, This guy is awesome. I love this guy, right? He's in his 70s. He's still working full time, treating patients and all that sort of stuff. And he's a really amazing applied kinesiologist, chiropractor. And one of the things he says, like people have forgotten to look at their client. Like watch them walk into your office, see what their gait pattern's like. You know what I mean? How they'll lay down. Okay, well, now what are you looking at? The skin. Like how are they laying down, right? Like touch their body. A lot of people don't do that anymore. And it's like that's just the basic foundational stuff. Now there's a lot of like courses that are just based on neuro, right? So like NKT, stuff like that. PDTR, right? So it's all neuro-based. That's fine. You can have some of that, but don't forget about manual skills. That's one thing I was discussing with Nick the other day too. I'm like, man, people have to go back to the basics too. Don't think that everything is going to be all neuro-related. I mean, if you got super tight fascia because of whatever, 10 years of emotional buildup, well, you know what? The neuro stuff might get rid of some of it, but it won't get rid of those tight adhesions that are in there. So don't forget to get your hands in and do all this sort of work as well, right? So it's super important that that we use all of our tools that we can when we're putting together this type of plan for your client. Okay, and if you're a nutritionist that doesn't have the license to really go in and touch, that's okay. You can refer them out after to a therapist, right? That does do that stuff, no problem. So you do your stuff with them, and after you're working with a massage therapist or a chiro or an osteopath or whatever, and then they'll be able to take care of the other stuff for you. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Just
Okay.
one quick question. The one you were talking about, people that are hypomethylator to focus on B6 and B9.
Yeah.
Would you do a B complex or would you do like a B complex and specifically B6, B9?
Yeah, so you can do a B complex. It just really depends also what their activity level is too. If they're really burning through a lot of their B vitamins, or if they're really stressed too, they might need a little bit extra B6, might need a little extra B9 as well.
Okay.
So it really depends on the individual and what their activity is, what their stress level is, because B vitamins, as you know, help a lot with stress, right? Mm-hmm. So it really depends on that sort of thing too. Okay. That's a good question though. Okay. Yes, Amanda.
When you're talking about the enzymes and you said that Organica is bad, how are you able to know that? What is it?
Well, you're going to see in the notes. So in the notes, I've listed the criteria of what you need as far as amounts go for every section that you're looking for with the enzymes. And Organica doesn't meet it, not even close. Not to shoot down a company, but make better products. All right, so that's good there. Okay.